This is a very unusual little light. It's available from places like eBay and AliExpress. This one came from AliExpress where it was significantly cheaper than eBay. And it's quite unusual because it's got a lens all the way around and it actually projects a beam of light in all directions. This is described as a windowsill light. And the point is that if you've got a windowsill with the window frame around it, if you place this on that, let me just plug this in. We'll analyse the power at the same time. I have connected the earth wire on this. There's no point. It's not connected inside as usual. We shall open it and explore it in a moment. I've plugged it in. The new hoppy, it's not a hoppy anymore. It's an anti. It's got 3 buttons, including one marked fun. It doesn't give you fun though. I'm not really sure what the fun button is. The instructions are all in Chinese. Power consumption 8.5 watts. Power factor 0.5, that's typical. That's just what you'd expect. But this thing projects a beam out in all directions. Literally all directions. And the idea is that if you put it on a windowsill, it will light the whole interior of the window frame with a sort of ribbon of light, almost like a neon tube around it. And it looks okay. The pictures on AliExpress and eBay typically show them in corridors. And that has an interesting feature that would be quite nice in, say for instance, a nightclub. Here it's just creating the line around it. And if I was to point this, well, let's do that. I'm just going to point at the wall from here to about 10 feet away. That's about, say, 3 meters or so. It's opened out. The beam has opened out to approximately that wide. You know, it's got a fairly wide divergence, but it's still not too bad. But let me show you a really neat feature of this that is quite distinctive. So I'm just going to pause the video for a moment and change the setup and show you what this does when smoke is blowing through it. One moment, please. So here's the light at the bottom of the screen. You can see the beam spreading out from it as a flat line, reminiscent of the laser curtains that you used to get, where it used to create a flat line laser. And if I get a device that can blow smoke through it, you will see that where this smoke actually passes through the beam, it's all just cleared off to the side, but that's okay. Let's try it again. Where it passes through the beam, you see a slice out of the smoke, and it's a very distinctive effect. It's really quite attractive. It's all decided to go off the right-hand side for some reason. I'm going to give this another go. And start off over there, just to see if I can get this effect better. But quite a nice effect. That could be quite pleasant, just pointing down in a nightclub, not just creating a line on the floor, but also potentially highlighting this sort of fog as it goes through it. Okay, the light is about to come back. Watch your eyes. Okay, time to take it to bits. So I'm going to start by unplugging it. This seems like a good idea, and I shall disconnect the little quick connect here. And we shall explore why it's not earth for a start. So this rotates on the front, it screws on, and when it unscrews, I shall zoom down this just a little tiny bit, it reveals a lens in the style of a sort of like bangle, a sort of amulet. And that is being sandwiched between this silicon seal that has been laid into a groove that has been machined on both sides. And the light source itself is a square hub in the middle that has an LED physically glued on with a hard silicon glue on each side. It does say Cree. Not sure if it's Cree or not. I just never really trust it when they say Cree. It's interesting to note that when I first got this, there was a very dark area of the beam. And one of these wires was actually just basically right down directly in front of the LED like that, which was obscuring quite a bit of the light. If you got one of these for yourself, these big links here aren't really needed. You could actually put a little sort of floating wire link round, although I'm sad that it might be quite hard to solder onto this now it's on a heatsink. Okay, let's take a look at the power supply inside. Let's grab a suitable screwdriver. Another thing I noticed was the cable pulled out quite easily from here. It's not really gripped terribly tightly in that. And I get the feeling that it's going to be a standard power supply module because that often happens when they've got the made tail in the power supply module, and they just stick it in. It'd be nice if they put longer tails in those, but they are kind of designed to be built into equipment. That's also why the earth is floating, because it doesn't go into the power supply module, and it's usually just cut off or attached to something inappropriate, or just glued in place, which doesn't work too well. There's the earth floating. They could have actually maybe clamped under there, but having said that, that's not going to be so great for the ceiling, is it? But there's what we have. A little LED driver. What does it actually say here? Oh, it's got a fairly high voltage output. Let's grab my little magnifying glass here. DC at DC 6 to 11 volts at 600 milliamps. So yeah, it's treating those as 2-watt LEDs on the front with a 600 milliamp, and each is dropping about 3 volts. So that's the best part of, well, what is this? What did it say? It said 6 to 11 volts. That is just using this at its maximum capacity then. Model ZX 2 to 3 times 3 watt. Okay, they're using 4, but not to worry. These things happen, so they're pushing this to its max. But the construction is nice. It's like almost like a machined casting, the way it's done. Not sure what it's made of. I would tend to guess aluminium or aluminum, but people often say that, you know, that's not what it potentially is. It could just be another sort of generic casting metal. If you do open one of these up and you want to put it back together, you have to center this lens on that seal and then hold it very tightly as you screw this back on. Because as it tightens up, and my fingers are going to get in the way here, it wants to squish that lens and make it slide about, but you can just nudge it. You can fine tune it just before you give it its last little tighten. I'm not sure how waterproof it would be. Suppose that this is waterproofish by default because it's got the potting compound in it. But I'm not sure what would happen if water got in here. But hopefully it wouldn't, but you never really know. I'd probably tend to use it inside anyway. But there we go. It's quite neat. It's AliExpress. I'll put a link to it, in fact. An AliExpress windowsill light. And it works. It does project that beam out in all directions. There's a few different versions. This was one of the cheaper generic ones, but I bought it because I like this style of this sort of heat sink. But that's neat. And the heat sink in the back here, they're doing a fair effort to heat sink it, although ultimately the heat has to come from this area at the back of the power supply, from where the LEDs are mounted, other than through the thread onto this. There we go. An interesting light. It actually lived up to my expectations. It probably could do with a little extra screw being added on here for the earth connection. But that is about it. It's pretty good. I like it.